You know, for the past few years, I kind of have a little hobby, which I don't spend enough time doing, but it's gardening. And I have a garden that's kind of grown. It grew from just potted garden to a raised bed to where I rototilled part of our lawn, and we now have a garden. And some of the vegetables are successful, and some they're not so successful. Like, I'm getting lots of squash and lettuce and tomatoes. We're eating those right now. And then there's plenty of peppers that are growing. We harvested some of the peppers, the banana peppers, and they were good. But these rabbits, these pesky little rabbits, came along and ate all my snap peas and all my pole beans. And yesterday I went to to up in Amherst and bought a fence to put around it. I'm going to plant the pole beans again, keeping these pesky rabbits out. But you know, there's an article that was written that lists the 10 things of what you have to do to garden, and in order, kind of like what they do on the Tonight Show. Number 10 is that we definitely reap what we sow. So what we do, how we do our garden, that's what we're going to get back in return. And number 9 was without rain and storms, then nothing grows. I mean, we can irrigate, but the rain and the storms help us, and the gardens and the fields just to seem to be much lusher when we have some storms and some rain within our week. Number 8 is when you're weeding, be careful, because when things are little, sometimes what you weed is actually what you sow. Number 7 is that deep roots are good. Without the deep roots, without a loose soil for the plants to really get in with, then you're either going to get really small vegetables or the plants are going to die. Number 6 is that pruning and trimming, although is a pain, it's necessary for these to bear fruit, especially the ones that come back year after year. Number 5, shortcuts just don't work. If you take a shortcut almost in anything in life, things don't happen. Number 4, gardening requires attention, hard work, and commitment. If you just plant the seeds and think they're going to grow, well, that's just not going to happen. Number 3 is you can't rush the harvest. The premature fruit is just a little bit sour. Number 2, you can garden for life and you can experience the bounty and the beauty up until the day we die. And the first thing to remember about gardening is that, well, fertilizer happens. Without fertilizer, nothing in the garden is going to grow. Well, today in the gospel we have Jesus, and Jesus is preaching about a sower, which is a farmer back in his time. This is sometimes called the parable of the sower, but it's really the parable of the soils, not the sower, but of the soils. It's kind of a dirty sermon today because we're going to talk about dirt. Jesus was preaching in the synagogues up until this point, and now he's getting a name for himself, and maybe he was just a little tired. We know how that feels going through this whole COVID thing. So he sat down on the beach, and all of a sudden crowds came, and he got in a boat, and he went out a little ways, and he sat there, and the crowds were there to listen to him. And that's when he came up with this parable, because he spoke a lot in parables. He may have been forced out of the churches, out of the synagogues, because of what he was saying, and the leadership didn't like it. But now he's preaching these parables, and these parables have a central meaning, and in today's it's explained to us. Jesus took the time to tell the people what was going on so they could react to it. You see, this sower who comes out, he doesn't know the conditions, just like most of us who have a neighborhood garden, unlike some of these big farms that know what the soil condition is when they plant. He didn't know what the condition was of these people who were there to listen to him. And then he preached about this sower, who was really kind of a messy farmer, right? He just went out and threw seeds wherever. That's a little bit contradictory to what goes on by farmers today. Now they have GPSs in their tractors, and they can just let the tractor go by themselves while they watch TV, I'm not kidding you, and listen to music and let it go, and it's gone into a computer grid model of how this field is planted. But Jesus was talking about a much different thing. Just go on out there and throw the seeds wherever they need to be. You see, when he was talking about this, we know that in those type of things, there's these people, these birds, or in my case, these rabbits, that are hovering around, waiting to snatch away the seeds that we're trying to plant. Jesus is talking to us about understanding the gospel, knowing what it is, and an urgency to get that out. You see, knowing the gospel is a life-changing knowledge. It means that you not only have to understand the gospel, but you have to be attentive to it, and you have to persevere. See, Jesus talked about 4 different types of soil. He talked about the path, which was really no soil at all. It was hardened down, the seeds just laid up on top, and the birds came and they just ate the seeds before they could produce anything. And then he talked about this rocky ground, this ground that was out there where the seeds went. They grew quick, but they had no depth, no root. And after a while, they just went away. And then he talked about soil which may have been good, but had thorns growing in it, and seeds fell in there and they grew, but yet they were choked off and were never able to produce the fruit. And then the good dirt, the black dirt, the dirt that was really good, the good soil that the plants grew, they rooted and they were abundant. You see, that's kind of like us. The sower threw the seeds out and he had to have perseverance that some of the seeds were going to take. But we have to have that perseverance that this gospel that we follow, the word of Jesus, is going to be something that's going to change our lives, change our world, come back and do something for us. You see, we need to be able to be a sower even when there's powerful opposition to what we're sowing. And Jesus says it out here, even when we feel persecuted. Now, none of us probably are going to be as persecuted as Jesus was, but yet we still know that people are reluctant to hear what we're saying. Whether it's our right to say that people have the right to love who they want to love, or whether all lives matter, but no lives will matter until Black lives matter. Whether it's what we say that everyone has the right to say something, even if it really destroys what we're thinking, they have a right to say it, and we have to let them say it. You see, Jesus also talked about this aspect, the thorny ground, where we know that there's temptation that comes against us. See, if you remember, one of the things that we talked about in gardening is that there were no shortcuts and that gardens require attention and hard work. Well, so doesn't the gospel. Sometimes people come and they want to get the quick fix. They want to just do it as quick as possible. Those are the type of people that are lured away by the worldly anxieties and the attachment to wealth above all. You see, if you sow like Jesus was saying, you're going to get a miraculous harvest. And know that all the growth in that harvest is going to come from God. Opposition may eliminate up to 3/4 of the seeds that we sow, yet the remaining yield in God, and Jesus said 100-fold, will have a great yield. Because it'll be a worthy yield. We can't worry enough about our failures. We need to keep pushing forward. See, because a message is rejected, it doesn't mean that that message is wrong. And sometimes we get discouraged because of what we're talking about rejected by others. We don't want to talk about it anymore. But a fact of life, as in a fact of farming and in faith, is that message, though may be rejected by some, is still a worthy message. You see, we come in here and we see different types of people that come into the church, and they're all good. We have those that come as church shoppers. They want to be entertained. We have those people who are in crisis and come to the church up until the point when the crisis is resolved, and then we may never see them again. We have people who come into a church because of their kids, and they want that done, and yet in the fall, when sports come, we don't see them again. We know that when you're a sower, like Jesus talked about, well, that's not really very good business of farming. And yet our gospel is so much bigger than the business principles that are out there. I was involved a long time ago with the establishment of this thing called Cathedral in the Night, and we went out and we preached the word, and we had all sorts of people coming. Every soil was represented in that point. And yet the word that spread may not have brought great wealth to that ministry, but yet it brought great wealth to those who heard it. You see, we cannot only sow our seeds in good soil, we need to sow our seeds in all of the soils. Faith is a gift from God. And the faith that leads to our discipleship is showing that God is working through each and every one of us. We need to be able to spread the seed extravagantly without having to worry about how much our church is going to grow or what we will get back from those seeds. We need to worry about the good news is going out to everyone, not only in word, but in our actions. We need to give thanks for the fruitful growth that we get, whether we see it happening in the coffers or in the growth of our church or not. We need to give thanks that we are reaching people, we are helping people, we are being the church. And finally, we need to be hopeful and humble. We can't give up. We can't say that this isn't working. We need to keep going out and doing the same message that was preached 2,000 years ago. And if we do that, good dirt will come to us. Amen.